How y'all doing? It's Jared. This Maxace Banchee.
The word that comes to my mind when flipping this knife is aggressive. Listen to this. You hear that? Just that snap. Because this thing, honestly, it's got a serious handle bias, right? Which I'll get down into the design of that. But it comes into actually flipping this thing and the way that it feels going through the air. It feels aggressive. And then with the overall design of the knife, it's got the black G10 on there. It just feels tough. It feels like a cold steel folder, you know what I mean? Like a holdout one or the recon one. It feels like something that's built for a battlefield. It's built to take abuse, you know, and it feels like that in the flipping. And that comes majorly into just how it's balanced. It does have a major handle bias, right? There's a large rear bias in the design of this knife because it's got a really thin blade, slender blade and profile, and as well the actual blade stock is relatively thin. I'll get down into all of that on the actual table. I think there's some interesting design choices going on here, and it's done. It just delivers something that it does flip well. I mean, I can flip this thing as well as I can flip any of my other knives. I don't know actually how good that is, you know what I'm saying? But, I mean, I can flip this thing. I can maneuver it around. There's nothing that I can't do with this that I can do with any of my other balisongs, right? But if you remember, if you watched my video that I did on the Maxace Covenant, right? This thing, I said this thing feels more automatic, right? It feels like I'm doing less. You know, it feels like it's just kind of switching into place, right? And this thing is actually designed more reminiscent to the Pelican, right? And I haven't done an actual video on the Pelican yet, but this thing feels graceful. It feels graceful. That's the word that I really want to use. It's smooth and it's gentle and it doesn't shut very hard when you actually come around and close it. You know, it's just very, I don't know, just gentle is the word that I want to use. You know what I mean? It's not, there's not a whole lot of weight moving around. I mean, there's not a whole lot of mass coming around and actually slamming in. And it's not just the actual handles that are doing that. You know what I mean? It's a combination of things. Because when I actually move this thing around, right, if I flip this thing out here and hold it like that, okay, just hold it out there, I can feel, obviously, the hand, it wants to turn this way, right? It wants to flip down. But there's a large amount of weight. The weight discrepancy between the blade and the handle is greater than in a lot of other knives. Because if I hold up the Covenant here and I do the same thing, obviously it wants to flip down the same way, but it's just less weight. There's less pull going towards that side, even though they do have a very reminiscent blade shape, right? The way that this thing feels most reminiscent in motion, you know what I mean? And in the way that it swings through the air is actually most like this bare bones. This is a bare bones, BRS bare bones 2.0. And it's kind of the same thing. It's a steel construction as well. Maybe that has something to do with the overall design of this thing. But it carries a lot of the weight towards the back of this knife. Again, the blade isn't very thin. There's not a whole lot of mass out there with the blade. And so the weight discrepancy between the blade and the handle is much closer in something like the bare bones there to this Maxace Banshee. It feels the same way. You know what I mean? It just feels like that. I've actually got a little bit of handle play there. I need to tighten this thing up. I haven't actually Loctited this thing yet. But I can feel a large swing, right? There is that swing, that arc in the motion, right? Which really reminds me of the Replicant, right? Let's just run through a whole bunch of them right here, right? I can feel this, right? I can feel the swing and that large loop that comes around with the weight, right? But it feels like I can honestly feel the blade. You know what I mean? I can feel that there's a separation in weight. You know what I mean? It doesn't feel like it's pulling in a singular direction. When I swing this thing around, I can feel that it wants to pull more just out of my hand opposed to actually just a singular direction floating around, if that makes any sense. When I do that same thing, when I do the same thing with the Pelican, or the Banshee here, I keep doing that. With the Banshee here, when I actually swing this around, it doesn't feel like there's anything else. It literally feels like I've got the blade or the other handle here, and it's just a pivot system, and I'm just swinging that handle around. I don't actually notice too much of the blade in motion. And so I mean, I can definitely do all of the things that I can do with any of the other knives. It loves to do rollovers and things like that because I really think it is momentum based with these steel back spacers, the steel construction, just the way that it swings through the air. And it does flip well. I do like the way that it maneuvers, but really, if I had to place it anywhere in the whole little family of balisongs, this thing is going to be aggressive. It's tactical, especially with this blade, the way that it's, I'll get further down into the overall design of this thing, but that's really what this thing just screams at to me is hardcore. It is a good flipper, and I definitely do enjoy it. I enjoy a little bit of more weight. I like the more neutrally balanced flipper. I can definitely appreciate that. Something like the Pelican there, or like the EOS that I got, the Benchmade 87. But just having you see how little my finger moves there, coming around, opposed to something that is a little bit more neutrally balanced. When I actually do that rollover, I have to deliver more. There's more of a loop, actually. You see that? I have to do more of that to keep that covenant coming around, which is not the case with the Banshee here. It just wants to, you see, that was actually an index rollover, but I mean, it really just works well to keep that momentum flying around. And I think that actual balance, just the overall design of this knife, is contributing to that really swinging feel. So if you're more of a fan of the bare bones, you're more of a fan of the kind of BRS swing opposed to something more like the Covenant, which just feels more automatic. It feels like there's less rotation actually happening, even though it's the exact same amount of rotation. Yeah, I think this flipper is definitely going to benefit guys who are more based towards that momentum, especially with the setup out of box. But I'll get further into that when we get down onto the table.
Yeah.
Yeah, so check that out. There's the handle play after doing that flipping, because I tightened it down before I flipped it. It's all in that handle right there. Give them a little bit of a tighten because I'm too damn lazy to Loctite this thing. Solid, no handle play. I love bearings. It definitely makes it better. If you're an excellent flipper, you know what I mean? I can definitely see the preference out there. There is an argument for bushings or just a straight washer and pivot system over something like bearings. But I do have an appreciation for them. I like that Maxace continues to use the bearing system in here. However, with this design here, I can see a little bit of a problem with a possible ingress in material. Just, gunk getting in there. If you're throwing this thing in your pocket, if you drop it in the dirt, because of the way that it's designed here, you can see there's a large amount of space for just gunk and debris and everything could get in there. And that's one of the negatives to this. You can see how thin that blade stock is. This thing has a lot thinner blade stock than most of the other Maxace knives. Here's a Covenant. If I can actually get this thing up. Covenant here up for size comparison, and I think the reason that they did that is just trying to actually match the size, right? Because you've got the liner here, you've got the G10, you've got everything that has to be as thick as it is, right? Especially with the with the bearings in there, and so you have to have a thinner blade stock, right? To fit this overall design, you do have to run with that thinner blade stock, and that's one of the things that I think contributes to having the lighter or the more handle bias, because there is a larger handle bias to this design, right? If I can actually get this thing to balance on my handle there, or my finger there, with the steel back spacers that comes with it stock, you can see that. So it definitely does want to lean more towards that, but I think it is balanced excellently well. You know what I mean? The balance point really on a balisong almost has anything to do with nothing, right? It really isn't. It's a good reference point, but it's not the script on how the actual thing is going to flip through the air, on actually how it's going to maneuver through the air. Because this thing really does. It feels lighter when it's moving, but it's still carrying that momentum, right? I can feel the swing, and I can feel all that arc and the slam every time it comes down and bap. I can feel that just bap, slamming down. I can feel that weight hitting, but it doesn't feel very heavy. You know what I mean? It doesn't feel like a very heavy balisong. This opposing something like a 6-action, if I'm flipping my 63, it doesn't feel the same, even though that balance point is right about in the exact same spot, distance from the actual pivot itself. So it's got its own interesting feeling. And I think a lot of people were actually kind of hoping that this thing was going to be the lesser, cheaper version of the Pelican, right? The Maxace Pelican here. And it definitely does take a lot of design cues, right? And the fact that it's a good flipper is they do share that. You mean that it definitely shares that in common. However, the way that they flip, the way that it feels in hand, it's really not a cheaper Pelican here. You can see the Pelican is a much smaller size. I definitely prefer the larger size of the Banshee here over that, but it doesn't feel the same. It's definitely got its own its own beast. I mean, and I really love it. I do like how this thing maneuvers. I like that extra bit of weight, but look at that stonewash. I freaking love that stonewash. It's just beautiful. And this is a drop point blade design, and it's more pointy. It's got much more of a sweeping belly opposed to some of the other designs. Again, I'll pull this Covenant back up for reference here. You can see that there's more of a belly. There's more of an actual sweep coming up on the Covenant there. It's the same thing with, you can see that it's relatively the same thing with the Pelican. And so that's one of the things that just makes this thing scream combat, scream fighting knife for me. The black texture G10, peel ply texture G10, although it is available in a whole bunch of other colors, but just the texture of it, the fact that it does have a tremendous amount of grip for a balisong. This is, if I'm going to stick any balisong really into hard material, stab it into something, this is one of the ones that I'm going to go for. Because that thinner blade stock, it's going to go into material, just the overall piercing design of this blade, the aggressiveness of this overall blade shape, and just the grip that this handle offers. I like this knife for a fighting knife. If I'm going to choose a balisong, I'm not going to choose a balisong to get into a fight. I'm never going to choose to get into a knife fight for that fact. But if it ever came down to, it's a Star Trek scenario, this is the one that I'm going to go for. I really like this knife for just its aggressive type feel. That's just the vibe that it gives me. The overall design is reminiscent of the Pelican. You can kind of see here, the lines have been taken in the same way. They've got that same kind of hole and milled out pattern there, even though it's kind of in the inverse, and where it is very reminiscent. However, the back of this thing is actually flat. You can see the Pelican is recessed on both sides. It's got that little bit of a dip coming down on both sides, leading to this area being thin. You know what I mean? It's still thick in this direction. It doesn't lose any thickness in this direction here, but it's relatively thin up there. That could be a hate it or love it kind of thing for a lot of people. I think this one here, the Banshee, actually kind of offers the best of both worlds, because you can see on the interior it does actually swoop down and reduce a little bit, but it's not reducing nearly as much because it doesn't have that same swoop on the back, right? And so it is just a narrowing in profile, kind of in a traditional manner on the actual back spine of the knife. And so it leaves it a little bit thicker, but it still does reduce it down in weight. And so you have a lot of control in actually spinning this thing and actually flipping it around. If you're going to twirl it, if you want to keep this thing sideways in the air and twirling it through your fingers, having that little bit of a thin section there with it still being as wide as it is, definitely it feels good, and it aids in, it just keeps it in the same spot. You know what I mean? You can keep it in the same spot better when you have that just little bit of a ramp, you know what I mean? Because you know where you're at on the handle and it doesn't want to go anywhere. So that's definitely a nice design aspect. I like the way that it's kind of altered from the original design there. It's done really well. And look at the jimping on this thing. As far as actual just, again, grip, you know what I mean? Grip in a work knife. Actually using this thing to cut stuff, which is something a lot of balisong enthusiasts are kind of falling down, and they're not really looked at as utility knives anymore. And I think this is an excellent utility knife, especially this one here, all balisongs in general, but especially the Banshee here. This thing is just a good work knife. It's a good dirty work knife. It's a good hard work knife. You know what I mean? If you're going to be carving something, doing food prep, whatever it is, it's definitely a good design for that. The latch, that's what I was going to talk about next. Sorry about that. The latch here is excellent. I like the way that Maxace Knives has been doing their latch, because it's kind of reminiscent to the Benchmade 87, the way that it just snaps in there, bam, snaps in there, and it's just solid. It's not going anywhere. I can't push that up, and that's kind of a negative because I can't really detach it with my finger. If you want to come in here and detach it with your palm or your finger, something like that, it's not really an option. You do have to squeeze it to actually release that. You know what I mean? You do actually have to squeeze it to release the latch, get, you know, whatever. If I can still talk straight. You do actually have to use the squeeze function, which it kind of does bug me. I've got like a problem with authority. I don't like things that force me to do anything one particular way when the other way is an option, but the security of that is excellent because being able to latch this thing down, especially if you are working with this thing, if you're going to be carving something, that offers just a little bit more protection because you're still probably going to be squeezing the handles together if you're carving on something really hard, but whatever. In the open position, give me 1 second. Sorry, dog's messing around. In the closed position here, you can actually just snap this thing into place, stitch it in your pocket. It's really secure. You don't have to worry about it coming undone, doing anything, stabbing you in the leg, anything like that. So I really do just like the way that this latch is designed. It's easy to take out. You can actually just remove it there. You can remove the scale, pop that little bar out. It's easy. It's a good design, and they like the way that they kept those little press. You see that? There's a little pressed in kind of ceramic ball detent looking thing. It's actually on both sides, and that's what's preventing it's working as a latch gate. It's actually preventing the latch from coming down and ever making contact with the blade, which isn't really an issue seeing as how it's a spring latch, but if you ever do come over and slam in hard enough, that's just going to prevent it from ever actually coming down and making contact with the tip, and it's an excellent way to save weight. That's not going to add a whole lot of weight to the design of this handle, and so I really do just like the fact that they kept that over. They've carried that over from some of the other models. That's definitely really nice. This is it's a sick balisong, especially for the entry-level market. I do like the fact that the customization, I think that people are, it has G10 scales. I mean, it's a steel liner with G10 scales on here. People are going to be making aftermarket parts for these knives. I mean, they're going to be coming up with different colors. You're going to be able to possibly get titanium. I doubt it. You know what I mean? There's probably nobody going to be able to put that much effort into it, but you can, milled scales, 3D printed scales, things like that. They're going to pop up on the secondary market if these things are popular enough and they've got a little bit of a following. I mean, there's definitely a focus towards them. So I do think possibly in the future that's going to be a really cool option. And I like the fact that they're offering different options in the color as well. You can get, I think it's like, I want to say red. I know they have the black here, a natural jade G10. It's definitely a good looking knife. I like the way that it's skeletonized. It comes with a pocket clip out of the box. I had to remove the pocket clip. Some balisongs I like a pocket clip, some of them I don't. Some I like a latch, some of them I don't. This one here I definitely like the latch just because of the way that it works. I really appreciate just bam, being able to slam that thing down like that, but I had to take the pocket clip off of this thing. But it is nice that they do offer that. I mean, it does come with a pocket clip, so you can really you really can carry this thing as a straight up EDC knife. I definitely like that. I want to give a shout out to Weeby Knives on Pier 39 in San Francisco. Check them out on Instagram, and if you're ever in the city, go to Pier 39, one of probably the best knife shop in the world. Check them out on Instagram, Weeby Knives on Instagram. However you say that, at Weeby Knives, whatever the jargon may be. That's it, Maxace Banshee. I almost said pelican. I freaking almost said pelican. Again, what the crap? If you saw my last video, I'm just going to say this at the end of this one. If you saw my last video, the first words out of my mouth was, hey, how y'all doing? This is a Maxace Pelican. This isn't a freaking pelican. This is a Banshee. That irritated me. That is the reason that there's a second video upload. Just letting you know. Y'all have a good one.